Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News on the South Florida Conservative News Center, Wednesday, December 10th, 10 of 1. And I'm sure many of you have noticed the revelations that are occurring in the Midwest of the amount of fraud and the kickbacks to terrorist organizations, to the Democratic Party, and things of that nature. Much of it occurring under the watch of Governor Walz and others of his brain trust, and the fact that these Somalians that have come here are not here to hide from some overbearing warlord who's trying to put them in jail back home, but rather were brought here to A, bolster the Democratic voting ranks, and B, be used to help loot federal money to be then funneled into Democratic hijinks, and then the remainder to be sent back to their own country, where it seems to be sponsoring terrorism, among other things. And as these revelations occur, instead of everybody being very upset about it, you see these other groups that are out there arguing, about other things, anti-Trump. I would be much more concerned living in Minneapolis to find out that my illegal neighbors were stealing billions of dollars from the taxpayer and using it for things other than what it was supposed to do. If I was a poor person of black or white or Spanish or whatever, and I was thinking, hey, we don't have a lot of good programs for us here. Oh, it's because the Somalians have sucked $8 billion out of the welfare coffers. Perhaps I should be mad at them. It doesn't occur. It's still not occurring on the surface. It's occurring beneath the surface. But on the surface, there are still many, many activists that are out there following the quote unquote party line. And it's very frustrating unless you realize, as we've discussed in the past with the transsexual thing and everybody else, socialism comes from a background of very intense psychological training, very intense propaganda, brainwashing, terms of that nature. These are all major part and parcel to socialist and communist movements. Doesn't matter which one they are, you will always see it there. So we are trying to identify the exact psychological mechanism that's at work. And it is the same mechanism, as I said, that we saw with the parents who pushed their kids into irreversible gender transitions when they were 8 years old or 9 years old. And they have to continue to double down, even though as these children are becoming teenagers, they're realizing the horrors that are inflicted upon them physically, the physical toll their body has taken at a young age, and how they want out and how they want to sue everybody. And but the parents still go to those meetings and are still proud of what they did. Well, it's the same kind of situation here. We're not talking about the policy of the Democratic Socialist Party anymore. This is what they call identity fusion or moral self-preservation. And nobody wants to have the terror of admitting to catastrophic error. So let's just go down this real quick so you get the idea when you're talking to people. Oh, and by the way, you're not going to be able to um, debate these people away. They will not be debated. They will not be changed by anything you say. So all of you guys are like, oh, if only what's his name, Andrew, what's his name would get out there and speak to them, he would be able to, he can't. He may be able to talk to somebody and win over an argument, but he is never going to win over these people that are as deeply psychologically affected as we're talking to. So many of these voters are what we call locked in. Even as this train is going off the rails, you see it going off the rails everywhere in the country. These people are on suicide missions, stopping, fighting with the police, putting together these resistance organizations. Resistance to what? Right? Like, resistance to what? To the law? These laws are there forever. They didn't make new laws. They're enforcing old laws. 9 times out of 10, they're going to make new laws now, But 9 times out of 10, these are old laws being enforced. So when you have a voter who has spent years chanting the party mantra that we're the good guys and Republicans are bad and they're Nazis, blah, 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 something profound happens within their identity. And this is straight psychology 101, maybe even a 200 level. We've thrown some stuff in here. Their political affiliation has become tied to their self-worth. All right. When political belief and personal morality merge together, you now have a person who cannot admit that their party is corrupt, that their leaders have lied, their values were manipulated, the policies they supported harmed people. The country is worse because of their choices, that the country in general dreads having you shitbags around. It is a personal confession of wrongdoing, and the human mind will do almost anything to avoid that. And that's what I said. Go back to what we talked about with the trans children. It's all the same kind of a thing. The trans child parallel, which is why they started you down there to bring you to here, this is incremental indoctrination. Okay. We indoctrinated you by small bits until you're so far gone, there's nothing that they can do with you. The trans child parallel, all right? But you have to understand that. You understand that. You understand everything else. Okay. Both cases, they can't face the truth without shattering their own identity. If a parent acknowledges they allowed or encourage their child, picture this: my 8-year-old child has been put on drugs to change their sex. I'm going to allow a double mastectomy to my daughter who is 10 years old. They're going to allow their child to be sterilized, which is for life, surgically altered, which is for life, due to social pressure or almost, I can't even say it's Munchausen syndrome. There may be some of that in there, but the social pressure to be able to give something to the machine to be acknowledged as a team player is what we're talking about. That's how sick it is. You want to be able to say, I harmed my child for the cause. You don't want to say, I harmed my child. I failed to protect them. I prioritized feeling good about myself over the well being of my children. That's that thing going on there where most parents are psychologically incapable of saying that, especially when everybody else around them is already saying it. And especially if they know on some level this was wrong and they did it anyway. It goes against every bit of DNA that you have to destroy your own children. And that's what they have done. So they construct this protective mental narrative. Oh, I did the right thing. I'm not the monster. It's always Trump. No, the critics are bigots and Nazis. No, the doctors and activists did not manipulate me. And if it was illegal, why did the doctor do it? My child is better this way. He always wanted to be a girl, or she always wanted to be a boy. The alternative is too emotionally devastating, as I said. Can you imagine if any of you who have children out there, if you sat down and looked at the kids and said, I could have destroyed your life, or I did destroy your life, and there's not a goddamn thing I can do about it now except say sorry, but you know what? Sorry doesn't get me through the thousands of medical appointments my child's going to have to go through now, the mental anguish, psychological destruction, good chance of suicide. And that's not because people don't accept trans people. The suicide comes from the abnormal imbalances in their body chemistry and the amount of dope that they have to pump into them to try to make them at least act normal for a little while. Go online, talk to any of these people who are trying to detransition, and they will tell you the horror of everyday life. It is ungodly what has been going on in the name of God. I don't even know what's going on in the name of identity, and the people who have pushed it. None of them are ever that part of persuasion. They're always just normal looking people, but they're using these little science experiments to further their cause. This is no different than what we're talking about going on here in the regular Democratic Party that's supporting the monster makers, right? I'm a Democrat. I support the forced transition to children. Not really into it, but my party is, and I pay money to my party. So therefore, yeah, I'm putting the bullets in the chamber, which is what you're doing. If you say, I'm not really up on this whole thing with this illegal immigration or whatever, first of all, you wouldn't say illegal immigration, you'd say undocumented workers. But you're like, yeah, but yeah, it's not hurting anybody except for the people that are permanently unemployed by bringing in slave labor. Ask anybody out there, black, white, Spanish, who is third generation welfare in a community that it turns out they could have had jobs that would have elevated them out of the welfare system, out of the zoo, out of a cycle of violence, drugs, prostitution, whatever, but you wanted to have slave labor working in your shop because they're all so fucking great at what they do, which is not true. Most of these guys are no better than the next worker, but they have a better PR staff. Go online. I'll tell you to go on to Instagram and look up any building inspector video that's out there, and you will know who the crew is. They're all Mexes of some type, or Guatemalans or whatever they are, and they fuck these houses up. The owner or the builder doesn't care because he's just doing it to do it. You know who gets stuck with these giant $100,000 repair bills? The owner of the house. And you wonder why housing costs so much money. Probably all the insurance and lawsuits and everything else, right? So this is all going on. And this psychology, we could say, is at the point of no return. Once a person crosses a certain threshold of ideological investment, admitting error is going to be very similar to humiliation or guilt, moral indictment, social exile. Why do you think Antifa is supposedly this tough knit group? They have to stay amongst themselves because terrorists have to hang out with other terrorists. It's the only way to validate what it is that they're going to be doing, especially in the United States, where they're telling us we're such a horrible country to live in. And the poor people here are getting fat, as they would say, right? What are we talking about? Everything that this party, the Democratic Party, is saying that is bad about the United States has been traced back to them themselves. And the people that are involved in forcing their belief system at the point of a gun or a bomb or tear gas or whatever it is that they're out there doing, painting over valuable pieces of art, all that type of stuff, they have to reconcile that in their head. And it's just not going to be that easy if you had any kind of upbringing, which even the worst person is going to know what's wrong is wrong. Okay? And they don't even say it anymore. It's like we say, we use the train analogy. The cliff isn't real. The conductor knows what he's doing. Anyone who says otherwise is dangerous. And that is the heart of the democratic socialist political movement as of today. And why do these voters not wake up? Why are they going to wait until they hit the wall? You know, admitting that they were deceived feels worse than continuing the deception. The pain of the betrayal is greater than the pain of the slow decline. It'd be similar like your spouse is cheating on you. I know probably that it is happening, but I have not heard about it yet. I have not seen it yet, so it has not happened. I feel better, but I know the day is coming when it's going to happen, and I'll deal with it at that point. That's kind of what the Democrats are doing right now. Their social world, which is everything in the media, enforces that lie, reinforces that lie. Everyone around them says the same. Everything's good. Trump's going to jail in a week. We will be able to continue to stop him wherever we can. They have not stopped him yet. You will see an article that says a judge does this. 3 weeks later, the judge is overturned. They should arrest all of them. I hate to say it because this is activism at its worst. The judiciary branch of the US government has been so raped up and bored out that nobody takes them seriously anymore. The only body who probably does is any defense attorney who's been under one of these judges who gets overhauled and probably runs back and says, this judge wasn't fit to hear the case of my client. I want a retrial or I want my consequences set aside, things like that, right? Which is what you would do under the woman who set aside the conviction of those two Somalis for the 5 million or $7 million. They found 2 million, 5 million's missing because they think the people at the state took it, right? They set aside the punishment. Now, if I have somebody who goes in there, an American does some kind of fraud, and she wants to max my client, I'm going to have to say, Your Honor, you showed clearly that people that had a higher level of guilt have gotten no time at all. Why does mine get it? I need to have this, or same thing. I need to get you to recuse yourself because I can see that you don't understand the law. You have to come up with something. You can't say because you hate the United States and everything it stands for, and you get off on power. That's why you're a judge because you don't really have to do much to get to that position. So that's also in there in this social fantasy world for these people. All right. I guess I'm splitting up a little bit too much. I'm sorry about that, but you know, they don't want to admit to any of these truths because it will shatter a lot of these individuals as people. But you know what? Fuck them. They're costing America money. They're costing American lives. They are dangerous. They are more dangerous than any number. I'd feel safer in a bear attack than I would at any of these Antifa events, especially if I owned an Apple store, right? Because for whatever reason, they all carry Apple phones, but yet they destroy Apple stores, right? Don't you think they should be real like neo-Luddites, like the Taliban? You know, Taliban can barely figure out how to make a dial phone call. That's where you're supposed to be. But you're not because these groups are trying to take America intact, thinking that America will just, oh, well, we're under Islamic law. Oh, well, we're under Antifa law. We'll just keep doing what we do, but the money will go to Antifa or Islam. That will not happen. It cannot happen by the definitions of capitalism. You're stupid to think it. But obviously, these people, as we said, low self worth, probably not too much on the ball everywhere else, same kind of shit. So that's why you are where you are. Those of you who are following these groups that say we have to go out, you can go out and protest at every one of their events. That's fine. If you think, and someone says in the community, well, we can't enact laws against them, we should sit down and talk to them and try to figure out what's wrong. Just told you what's wrong with them. Everybody knows what's wrong with them. They know what's wrong with them too, but they aren't going to give it up because they've got nowhere else to go. Nowhere else to go. And they know when it's over, the end is going to be horrible for them. How are you going to go back to your neighborhood after you burned it down? How are you going to go back to talk to your neighbors after you maybe killed one of them, maybe tried to kidnap one of them, protested out front of people's houses, punched their baby and kicked their dog, right? You've done these things. This is on par, if you have a chance to do any research into what goes through the mind and the psychosis when we try to bring back child soldiers to the real world. A lot of suicide and a lot of murder. There is no real way back to happy life, which is why they continue to do what they're doing. So don't feel sympathy for them unless you have to, because they are not coming back on their own. All right. Now, there are people that are under that group, the Kennedy Democrats and things like that, who don't want to be out there doing all this shit, but they also don't want to be Republicans, which is why you see guys like Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes and all them showing up here at a time where they should be able to run over to the party. You have these racist pieces of shit that are sitting there as a block to keep you from getting into that party. Because let's say we're black voters and we see Nick Fuentes. Well, I'm not going to join a group that has Nick Fuentes in it. right? If I'm a black guy, fuck that guy. Why would I, right? Same with Carlson. He doesn't say it, but he's in the team, and a number of other ones, you know. Same with the gays. How could they come over? Even, some of them have, but how can they come over as a group if they see this? Because you have people on the other side that are, you know, not going to treat them well. The whole thing about using the word fag has gotten so it's like you're in sixth grade. I've never seen a bunch of adults so upset about that word in my life. I know gay guys that called each other that one time or another, for whatever reason. That was never derogatory. They were just like, oh, in passing. And I don't care, right? I don't. None of them are going to go out and hang themselves if you said, dude, you're being a total fag right now. No one's going to hang themselves. No one's going to feel super unwanted unless that's just come up at Thanksgiving, right? Say, pass me the mashed potatoes. By the way, John's a fag. Boom, different story entirely, right? Whole other story. We can't have these divisive elements out there that are going to stop these people from hitting the fire exits, which is what is going to be occurring. It's why they came out now when they've come out. You say, why would they come out? Well, first of all, they had the luck or whatever that Charlie Kirk is gone, who kept most of these animals at bay because they all desire his position, which none of them have the wherewithal or like I said, I've seen the organization before. None of those guys could step into that turning point organization and do what Charlie did. Not one of them. You can say the N word and fag and everything else all day. It's not what it was about, right? Nick Fuentes will never go that far. He will be just like you had with, oh God, Milo Yiannopoulos or whatever, who's made a comeback out of nowhere, right? What's that all about? What's that all about, right? That's what you should be worried. If you're worried about any of this dumb shit, who keeps recycling these people from the past? Who keeps moving them around the chessboard to block more people from leaving the Democratic Socialist Party? That's the important thing, is to bleed them out. They're going to say, "Oh, well, we get to keep the money." You got to you fight if you can. As far as I've heard, the Democrats are bankrupt, right? They get money sent into them as they need it because they're not sure who's going to continue with the organization, right? Republicans are similar. I think you'd have to check back and see how much money Trump ever got out of the RNC. I don't think it was ever very much money at all because they were against him. Same with people that are under his protection. Same thing. But let's not get into that right now. That's just some of the psychological stuff that we're dealing with. This is a level of psychosis that we probably haven't seen since like the plague era political movements. Seriously. So keep that in mind. Don't waste your time with these people. Go about your life. Make sure you're voting the way you want to vote, and you will be the happier man for it, or woman. So that's all. Have a nice week. I'm sure I'll be doing something in the next couple days, but that's about it for now. Goodbye.